and this is interesting. The Old Testament is not a book of monogamy, and the New Testament is. And here's why that seems to fit this whole model. The mating system that allows a population to grow at the maximum rate, if it's humans, is monogamy. And the reason is because human babies are so expensive to raise that bringing all capable adults into the process of contributing to the raising of children elevates the number of viable children that get produced per generation. So you go from an ancient, brutal world to a world in which your tendency towards violence drops and your tendency towards monogamy and investment in offspring goes up by virtue of the fact that all men are brought in on that process. And that fits the moment in history perfectly so that that idea spreads vertically, right? It does spread horizontally, but vertically, as that population that believes these things is spreading out across the world, it's taking over territory, and the idea is spreading as the population that believes in it grows by virtue of a high birth rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's see, what do I want to do with that? That K strategy, that high investment strategy, that to some degree seems to me to be a technical error that's implicit in Dawkins' formulation of the selfish gene. Because genes for human propagation code long-term investment strategies. And so that's very unlike what a mosquito does, or a fish, or a puffball with zero investment. And so there's an alliance between the gene, as far as I'm concerned, and how it's expressed in the phenotype, and something like a sacrificial process of child raising. And to call that selfish isn't, like, the metaphysics of that are inappropriate. I mean, the mechanism that Dawkins described, that might be operating, but the idea that the metaphysical implication of that is something like a valorization of selfishness, that just seems to me to be entirely wrong.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so interested in the story of Abraham, because I think it lays out the alternative pathway, which is something like long-term, committed, high investment, monogamy, structured in a manner that propagates most effectively across the largest possible span of time. That's why Abraham is the father of nations. Like, he establishes a pattern of patrimony that, all things considered, I think does something like increase genetic fitness over the longest possible span of time.
One of the things it does, moving from a primarily polygynous to a primarily monogamous system, is in polygyny, of course, you have the problem of most men aren't in on the winnings, and so you have a population that can go to war, but is mostly spent infighting among itself. So there are lots of reasons to prefer monogamy over polygyny, but with polygyny, you have the women solely doing the child raising, and so mostly not able to also explore other things that they might be able to do that would be profitable for the population. With monogamy, you have women still mostly doing the majority, usually, but their partners, the fathers of those children, are doing enough that the men are going to take a slight hit. You know, the successful men are going to take a slight hit in terms of their potential productivity in the world, because they are now doing some kind of work that they were not doing under a polygynous system. But the women get the benefit of the freedom to actually now start producing something outside of the children that is also good for society. And so you get a slight hit in one space, and suddenly half the population, should they choose, has the capacity to explore, maybe I want to weave or do ceramics or go to the moon, right? Whatever it might be.
So much for the oppressive patriarchy of monogamy.
Oh, sure. Well, that was, I feel like they, whoever they are, tried to throw you under the bus for that. And that was really actually, and this is a strange moment to talk about one of the craziest moments of modern times, but for me, as an evolutionary biologist, one of the craziest moments to see the media try to spin that is exactly the opposite of what it was.
Yeah.
Just exactly the opposite.
That's pretty funny. A defense of monogamy as misogyny.
Yeah.
Really. Especially when we know that the short-term human male maters, the ones who prefer that, we know their personality dynamics.
Right.
They're psychopathic, narcissistic, Machiavellian, and sadistic, just to add that additional twist, right? So you destroy monogamy and you deliver, especially young women, over to the hands of the psychopaths.
Yep.
Brilliant.
That's
There's
perfect.
nothing misogynist. Okay, so let